Good day, everyone. Thank you for joining today's Customers First Now CX Leader Series webinar event. We hold these webinars monthly on a variety of customer experience topics and try when possible to have our customers present on the topics. Last month, we had a great presentation by a former Chief Customer Officer discussing retention approaches. Today, we have a terrific information-packed presentation on best practices to building a high-impact journey map, how to analyze the map and voice of the customer feedback, and then putting the learnings into action. Before we begin, just a few key things. We are recording today's session for future download and replay purposes. You will receive an email from me, my name is Ann, with links to access the recordings. Anytime during this session, you can submit your questions by going to the Q&A panel on your WebEx control panel. Select Ask Host and enter your questions into the box. When you're done entering it, click Send. You can ask as many questions as you like, and we will try to answer as many as time allows during this hour, and we are going to try to end a little early so you can get off to your other meetings or other commitments. We are very lucky today to have two top-notch presenters. Vicki Stennis is joining us from STERIS IMS, global leader in infection prevention, decontamination, and surgical and critical care. At STERIS IMS, Vicki's role is Director of Customer Experience and Retention. She is based out of Birmingham, Alabama. Vicki is joined today by Kim Chambers, Principal Consultant with Customers First Now. Kim has an extensive customer experience background and has led many collaborative, operational, and strategic consulting projects in a variety of industries. And Kim is based out of Lexington, Kentucky. So they changed their names. STERIS IMS has been a customer of CFN's for many years, where Kim has been the lead principal consultant working with Vicki on the business side. And just a reminder before we dive in, please use your Q&A tab to submit your questions, which we will answer after the presentation. And if there's any follow-up actions, we will do so. And before you ask, for those interested in the presentation, Vicki has agreed to give it out to anyone interested. So in the same Q&A panel that you submit your questions, put your name in there, and after the presentation, I will deliver it to you. So with that, thank you again for joining us. I will pass you over to Kim.
Thanks, Ann. Well, Vicki and I are anxious to share our story with you guys today, so let's just jump in. You know, we all know that journey maps are valuable in bringing initial insight, a kind of discovery tool. But best practice is to keep using that map to drive action and visibility to and management of the experience on an ongoing basis. And Vicki's leading a really great program at IMS, and her success demonstrates really several key practices. You have to get the business aligned around the experience that you're delivering today. And a journey map is a great tool to do that. What are all the touch points, who owns them, and maybe most importantly, what's the most important to the customer? What's really critical to get right? And taking the opportunity along the way to engage key stakeholders at multiple levels in the organization in both the creation of the map and in solutions as those come up. And then socializing the map to the entire organization to make sure you build that alignment. Linking financial performance or impact to the actions that need to be taken can help prioritize and really, I think, bring a real sense of urgency to the actions that need to be taken. The journey map can also play a key role in designing or validating your VOC program, and it can't be said enough, engage the entire business in the process, involve the stakeholders in the creation of the map and the creation of the solutions, and then communicate. And Vicki and I are going to share today examples of all these. So Vicki, why don't you start with sharing a little bit about the IMS journey?
Thanks, Kim, and to everyone that's joined the call this morning. I'm just delighted for the opportunity to spend some time with you. And actually, Ann alluded to it a little bit of confusion about what is the company's name, but it really to provide some context and background, even as to how journey mapping became important to us. What I've got depicted here on this slide is our parent company is the STERIS organization, and Ann's already described our company in focused on healthcare, pharmaceutical research, and medical device companies. And actually what happened is back in 2012, STERIS embarked on a series of really strategic acquisitions to meet a growing need to provide hospitals a competitive alternative for the repair of surgical devices and instruments. So all of those logos, one is IMS, which it stands for Integrated Medical Services. One of those, all of those companies actually were part of the acquisition effort during that time. And today, STERIS/IMS, as we refer to ourselves, is really the sum total of about 13 organizations that have come together in just a few short years. And the reason I mention that is because, as you might surmise, and certainly there's folks that are a part of this session this morning that have been through merger activity and acquisition activity in the past, and as you would anticipate, by 2015, the leader of the organization and the leadership team of the organization was really challenged by the need to get an aligned view of the current customer experience. It looked a little different through the individual lens of all those different companies represented there, and also to identify opportunities that would support aggressive revenue growth goals. And as Kim has talked about, the importance of beginning to engage the organization with an aligned view and in addressing identified opportunities. And last but not least, the importance and the need to engage our customers and our employees in this journey, as well as continuous improvement. So in the next slide, you'll actually see our customer journey map. And Kim, why don't I turn this back to you and let you talk a little bit about how we created the map.
You bet, Vic, thanks. So let me build out this slide a little bit for you, give you a little bit of context. So this map has the journey divided into meta stages. That's kind of the first row, and then the second row are the stages of the end-to-end journey. Early engagement, where customers are becoming aware and interested. I forgot inspire to the purchase. So as customers are becoming aware and interested, early engagement, where they make a decision to choose you or working to make that decision. And then in onboarding, when you're really getting the customer, we always say good to go. So getting them ready to use the product, deliver the promise, kind of day in and day out use of your product and services, increase value and commitment. You know, you're hoping that you're increasing value and commitment throughout the journey, but focusing on how you're deepening the relationship. Is there a renewal kind of stage that's part of your customer's experience? And then leave and return. So if customers are leaving, sometimes it's possible to know that and help stop it, or when they do leave, do you make that easy so that maybe later they will return. And this map highlights the view, the customer view. So this is based on customer feedback, with touch points that are pain points are highlighted here in yellow. So these are all the touch points in the end-to-end journey. And moments of truth, the touch points that are critical to get right, in green, or in red, if the customer is saying that not only is it critical to get right, but it's also a pain point. And so our process includes internal interviews as a starting point at both the executive and frontline employees to create a draft map. We always think that's about 60 to 70% correct. And then we workshop with a cross-functional team to really validate that draft map. Then you've got a pretty good aligned internal view, and then taking that out and validating or challenging it with customers and bringing back that validated back to the customer, to those who created it, And as you might imagine, sometimes there's differences in what customers see as critical issues versus what employees see. I think employees tend to see the things that make it difficult. This is that inside-out view. What's difficult for me when I'm trying to deliver to the customers? But this process really focuses on what escapes actually get out to the customer. And not that operational improvements might not be warranted, but we are really laser focused in this process on what is driving customer behavior. So Vicki, can you share what was most important to the IMS customer?
Yeah, thank you, Kim. So what actually, a theme began to emerge that really got to the heart of how we were delivering our brand promise. Providing a quality of repairs, again, I almost think of it as table stakes, but we were also selling a value proposition that committed to provide our customers with training and education and insights on how they could reduce the need for repairs and for other opportunities within their environment to drive improved patient safety and business outcomes. We came to call this the value adds, and I'll give you some examples. Back into the early engagement, starting in early engagement, particularly during the onboarding process, it became evident that we clearly needed to do a better job in setting aligned and prioritized expectations. And the key word here is aligned. We all know that the value driver for the price-driven decision maker is likely to be radically different from the day-to-day end user. So not only is there a need to set realistic expectations between us and the customer, but there's an equally important need to help the customer to align and internalize, or prioritize rather, internally. So align it and prioritize internally on their side against then what we can realistically deliver and by when. And in the second build, you'll see us moving across the map, we learned that we not only needed to ensure that we were internally delivering these value adds, but we also needed to ensure we were documenting and reporting progress day to day. Typically that would be with the end user, and against the expectations that we had mutually established early on. And then in the next build, you'll see that it can't just stop. We learned it can't just stop for us with day-to-day reports. The reporting had to be occurring at a more strategic level, appropriately tailored to the audience, so that in 3 years' time, when the contract was up for renewal, the decision makers would be keenly aware of the value that we had been delivering. Unfortunately, some of our customers told us they couldn't even remember the last time they had received a business review from their local account manager. And I'm convinced that even in decision-making at the price decision maker driven by price, that armed with knowledge from his or her own internal organization as to the value that a service provider has brought forward can come into play in the retention or in the renewal decision. So I would say that Kim and I both saw and heard some really great examples of where our account managers were nailing this and doing just a great job. But again, no surprise, considering the differences among all of the organizations that have been assimilated over a very short time, we knew that if we weren't consistently delivering to this, we could seriously impede our ability to scale and meet aggressive revenue growth plans. So in this next slide, we, armed with this knowledge in the map, our next step was to get into action, really involving all of the organization and socializing our learnings. And most importantly, and I think this is really important to stress, we knew we couldn't tackle all the problems at once. It's a common mistake. It's easy to make. But we knew we needed some early successes under our belt. And you can imagine, again, considering our background, we had plenty of internal skeptics. So we knew we had to engage frontline employees who actually were the ones that deliver the experience, and we had to help them see the value in providing our customers more than just the transactional and technical expertise, quality repairs at a competitive price. Rather, we had to help them begin to understand that the best way to keep the business was to provide value-added services and insights that help the customer improve their business results. And we actually came to call one of our first projects Insight Delivery, and it was a pilot project, which you can see depicted in this slide, and focused on driving action. Really important point there. It all seems common sense, but I would offer not always common and consistent practice. And again, considering all the different styles and approaches to account management, and secondly, depending on the legacy company from which an account manager had come from, there was and continues a very strong focus on upselling and incremental revenue generation within their assigned account. Frankly, some customers even expressed the sentiment that business reviews, when they did receive them, seemed at times as thinly veiled attempts to sell more rather than a collaborative and insightful discussion with the business partner. So in this next slide, I want to show you just a sampling of the multiple communication efforts and channels we have utilized and continue to utilize to build awareness and commitment for what has become really, quite frankly, a significant change management effort, and how important it is we've learned to demonstrate what's working. In this first example, we call it the Huddle. This was a communication that was developed and targeted to just our first Insights Delivery project team to help them keep informed on each other's progress, and a platform for them to share their success stories, especially as these team members were geographically dispersed. We also launched and continue to deliver employee communications to the broader company audience directly from our presidents, specifically addressing our customer experience journey and the milestones along the way. And then in the next build, you'll see perhaps one of the ones that got the most traction of all. We call them our service selfies. This became a real grassroots obsession. Team members capturing moments, taking pictures, taking selfies of customer delight. They circulated this on a weekly basis, and honestly, this had the highest open rates of any corporate communications. And then last, one of our most important lessons learned, and I've attempted to depict it on this last build, as new initiatives and projects or tools have been launched to support our customer experience journey, we have had to continuously go back and connect the dots and remind the organization that all of these multiple efforts, which to some can easily appear as just another project du jour, that they all link back to our map and our quest and endeavor to provide customers with what they need and value. And I think this is especially important when your journey might be taking place over a 1, 2, 3 continuous a period over a long period of time. This is just so important. So Kim, back to you.
Yeah, I just have to interject before we move on to talk a little bit about VOC. The work that IMS did around communication was just really so great. I think I've seen few companies do as nice a job as they've done. Not only do they have those service selfies, which I think really injected a lot of fun into the communication and got people who may not have visibility to this effort otherwise involved. They also did really fun videos as well. And so just really kudos, Vic. Just a really, really strong job around communication, and I think many times forgotten. So going on to the next slide, so we wanted to share how we used the map to inform the VOC design. So whether you're creating a VOC program for the first time, which was the case at IMS, or validating your VOC design with the map, it can also provide great context. And I think the first question is, where are the logical places to listen? And looks like, Anne, I thought we removed the builds, but there we go. Could you want to go build that out? Thank you. And, you know, looking at it, these might be places where you do surveys, Or they might be places where you gather feedback another way. For instance, in a win-loss situation, especially in a B2B environment, if you lose a big contract, perhaps it would be valuable for an executive to do an executive to decision maker interview. Might be the right way to handle that as opposed to a survey. But we first looked at the map and we said, where are the places where it's logical for us to listen? So when you think about win-loss, I already mentioned that. In onboarding, our customers, after we check in with customers, do we get them off to a good start? Are expectations set appropriately? Are they good to go? Are we doing a good job on service delivery, where here that's instrument and device repair, kind of the core to the product and services that we provide? And then addressing concerns, having those strategic conversations, and when customers do leave, are we finding out why? So those are the logical places to listen. And then we knew we might eventually get, so we want to move forward on this slide. And while we might eventually get to gathering feedback in all these areas, we wanted to prioritize, again, where to start. So we used moments of truth and pain points to identify what would be most impactful. So we looked at the map and looked at these multi-touch point experiences that we circled on the previous map and looked for where were the most moments of truth and pain points, where is it critical to get right and customers are experiencing pain, and how many times might they have this experience. So while onboarding is a critical experience, it does just happen once in the lifetime of a customer. So we really got focused on device and instrument repair. So let's take a look at the best practice approach we used to design the survey questions. So these are the questions for our device repair survey, and actually IMS launched not only device, but then transactional, and later a relationship survey, so we've piloted those over time with them. But the device repair is represented by the several touch points. So the questions need to cover all the moments of truth: quality of repair itself, timeliness of the repair, education regarding the repair, and the people who delivered the repair and communication, and then communications regarding the repair. So we need to make sure we addressed all those. And the questions needed to be specific enough to drive action. I think, you know, all of us, many times people push to get more questions added to the survey. And I think the right question to always ask is, when we get the answer, what will we do differently? So getting very specific, and they drive action and real value. Can you link an operational metric to the question that can be a leading indicator? So the survey is a lagging indicator. What's going to be our leading indicator? Then we can begin to build kind of a measures framework to help us understand what's going on and what really drives behavior with our customers. And can colleagues see their role in influencing? So when they look at the question, do they see how their job relates to that? Is that obvious? And a limited number of questions to increase survey completes. And although that seems so obvious, I know I see surveys all the time that are way too long. And then an open text, and I love here where we focused in on what the one thing, asking for what to do, we can improve, but to provide more context. And a lot of times customers will illuminate why they answered the previous questions particular ways, or bring something else that's important to them. So much value can be generated from that customer feedback. And so I think next, oh, okay, sorry, I've got my things out of order. And we use a 5-point scale, so just a simple scale, and then an index. We index that, giving equal weight initially at least, so we can rate overall customer satisfaction and begin to look at an overall score in this transactional survey. So Vicki, can you comment on how you've begun linking VOC results to financial outcomes?
Yes, thank you, Kim. And so in the next slide, as we move forward here, let me mention, first of all, this is our first quarterly results, and actually this just took place last fall, October through December at the end of the year. And when we looked at our first quarterly result, the index for all those questions that Kim just described was actually very good, 4.54 out of a 5-point scale. And we were really pleased to learn that about 80%, maybe actually a little bit more of our customers gave us scores of only good or excellent. And we felt pretty good about that. But in reality, when we started pulling that apart, we saw a not insignificant percentage of our customers, it was actually about 7%, that were not pleased, as indicated by the fact that they gave us any poor or terrible rating. And while that makes that percentage I just described may not seem significant, when we actually attached it to the associated revenue dollars that those accounts represent, we identified those as at risk, and it began to paint a different picture. And the total dollar amount, again, for obvious reasons, just out of respect for sensitive corporate information, I've not included those dollars, but they weren't insignificant. And it helped us provide really a clearer path to dig deeper and understand what were the driving issues in those very specific accounts. And Kim, I also want to mention that when we began our VOC program last fall, we also wanted our survey to drive a wow experience in itself. We made a very specific commitment that any poor score or negative feedback in our open text box would result in follow-up with our customer within 24 hours for resolution. We believe this can not only drive trust and credibility, but loyalty as well, if we not only solve problems, but go above and beyond. And most importantly, we gain an even deeper perspective of what the customer's needs are and what they value. And again, I can't overemphasize the importance of that gold mine in the open text box. So Kim, before I turn it back over to you to summarize and close, I think there's one final point I'd like to share with the people that have joined us this morning, and that is this. In our early stages of our own customer experience journey, there was a real cry from some of our leadership team to train all of our account managers so that everybody would be on the same page, and I think that seems very logical, but kind of now in the rearview mirror, as I think back and look back, I'm convinced that at that point in time, had we invested in that kind of training for several hundred people, it would have potentially been a costly mistake because we didn't have a single aligned view of our existing current customer experience, and I would argue not even really an aligned view of our intended customer experience, which is a lot of the work that we've been doing since we began this journey. And having this alignment, going back to the map and linking it to the knowledge that we learned from the map, it's just so foundational and critical to any training initiative. So today, 2 years later, now we've got the learnings from our map. We've validated, early validation with our VOC data, and some early successes from the frontline team members under our belt. Now we're ready to launch training, and in May we'll do that for the first time in our young company's history. It's a 2-day training program with all of our account managers, and clearly sales skills will be a focus, but so will be keeping the business that we have worked so hard to earn, and most importantly, consistently, persistently delivering on our brand promise. Kim, back to you.
Thanks, Vicki. Thanks for sharing such a great success story. And I know it's a story that's still being written, but really, really great progress.
Thanks.
And I think, yeah, you're welcome. I'm happy to, it was great working with you on this, and I can't say that enough. I think key to the success that Vicki's built, and we made these points at first, but really getting that business aligned view, real agreement on really several fronts, on ownership. So who owns the different parts of the experience, each touch point down to that level, what's critical to customers and making sure that the business is really aligned and behind that. And then where are those issues, and feeling comfortable with a map as a visual that describes that. So that initial value that you get from building the map, you really get to retain because you're pushing people back to the map, back to the map. Linking financial performance to actions that need to be taken. So although there's not been these projects, we haven't done a complete measures framework, I think Vicki's done a good job linking financial performance to actions that need to be taken. So giving the business, putting a little fuel to the fire on action that needs to be taken, look at the risk, the customer's at risk, and helping to drive real action there and with speed. And then using the journey map to help design, as IMS did, or even validate your existing program. And then involving the business in discovery and in solution creation. And I think that happens very consistently with a lot of our customers, but the communication is really key, and I think it's something that many times doesn't get addressed the way it should. So really driving communication to the entire business. And?
Yep, thank you, Kim. So here come the questions. They're rolling in. So thank you, everybody.
Awesome.
Yeah, and as a reminder, you can submit your questions by going to the Q&A panel on your WebEx control panel that you have as a participant. You select the Ask Host and you enter your questions into the box, okay? So the first question we received was, can you tell us a little bit more about how the VOC recovery team works?
Oh, thanks. Great. Ann, I'll take that one. So in full transparency, our VOC recovery team today, by design, because we've just begun to roll this out, is really one key individual with an internal customer care team that provides additional support. So it's small, and one of the issues that we're going to be facing is how do we scale this, because we found that it's so valuable. We're going to need to be able to do that. But in essence, we have, of course, the email addresses of any of our customers that gave us feedback that says, hey, I've got a problem, or we need to get in touch with them. So within 24 hours, our manager reaches out to that customer and identifies what the issue is, and then begins to work with the internal subject matter experts at our company to resolve the issue. And it sometimes takes more than a couple days to resolve the issue, but the communication, direct communication, is there with our customers. We really don't have a 1-800 number per se, so this is somewhat defaulting into that capability. And one point that I would add that was kind of a guiding principle for when we put the VOC response team in place was that we wanted to work resolution through the local account managers. And what I mean by that is we felt that it was important when we resolved the issue that the account manager be involved in the resolution and perhaps even the one wearing the white hat and delivering the good news. It is gratifying to me to know that many times when customers have a problem, it was not that our account manager was unaware. So we think it's important that they get to be part of the solution and not be perceived as part of the problem. And it also is telling us that we've got internal communication challenges that we need to be addressing. Thanks, Ann.
Thank you. Here's the next one. Do you have focused business process teams, and is that work on VOC directly aligned to the process teams?
That's a great question. And the short answer is yes. And I would give an example that VOC validated, has validated for us some customer dissatisfaction with the time that it takes to receive a repair. Some of our repairs are done on site, other repairs are done in labs across the country. So yes, we have a very focused lean team. We use lean methodology here in our company, focused on productivity improvements and quality improvements within the lab. We also, interestingly enough, through the VOC validation, learn that, hey, customers might understand that there's delays in repairing their equipment for a variety of reasons, but the communication around that delay is just so critical. Many of you all know I come from an airline background, and my analogy is always one around, hey, if I'm an airline customer, please don't wait to tell me when I've cleared security that my flight's delayed. Let me know so I can replan my day accordingly. And I mention that because that has become another process team. If we're going to let the lean team focus on solving some of the repair turn time issues, but we're going to focus on improving the communication to the account manager and to the customer around those delays when they do occur, and most importantly, what can the customer expect?
Thank you. Wow, we have a lot of questions. So if we do not get to all the questions, what we'll do is between Vicki and Kim, I have everybody's name that submitted the questions. They will reach out, and if you two don't mind, just reply back to the people directly. Is that okay? Because there are a ton of questions. Okay, here's the next one. How do you know your customers so well? With so many organizations coming together, did you segment your customers?
Another really good question. I would say two things are going on. One, we are in the process of segmenting customers. Clearly, we have all the way from individual hospital facilities to large, what we call IDNs, large hospital groups. And what's interesting about that question is within the healthcare industry, and you all have seen this in your own hometowns, we're seeing such consolidation of hospitals under big, large organizations, Cleveland Clinic, Providence, whatever the case may be, Emory, I come from Atlanta. So I think that, yes, we are doing that, but it is a continuous work because of what's happening in the landscape, in the industry itself.
Thank you. So the next one actually refers to a slide, so I'm going to move the slide, but I'll read the question first. In reference to slide 13, how do you make the correlation between the secure customers and 12 months revenue? Is it based on the revenue contribution of those customers? So,
yes, it is a great question. It is based on the revenue contribution of those customers. And, you know, frankly, the risk categories that we determined, we just as a leadership team had to say, are we willing to assign a risk category of high based on the criteria that they answered poor or terrible to any one of those 5 questions. And, you know, the group wanted to debate that. Some said, well, if they gave us an average and then good, it should be this. But at the end of the day, we took a pretty hard line on this and said, no, let's be hard on ourselves. So that's how we define the criteria. And then the question that was asked is very specific. Yes, it's 12 months revenue represented there.
Yeah. And,
thank you.
You know, just to add to that, you know, you could do, you know, you might want to do lifetime value of a customer, but sometimes that's difficult to get to that number. And I think what we were able to do was something fairly simple that still really, you know, created that many millions of dollars on a 12-month revenue, really created some, okay, yeah, this is part of a problem that we have with retention, and this is a way to get after that. So it really drove a lot of action.
Hey, Ann, and I also think that might be related a little bit if we expand on one of the other questions I'm seeing, because it's an important question. How do you show ROI on customer experience efforts? And Kim, you're really talking to that a little bit right now. You want to expand, and I can jump in if we have time.
Well, I think, you know, one is over time you have to create a real a measures framework. You know, part of what you need to have is you need to say, you know, do we have leading indicators, and that with operational metrics, very customer-focused metrics, do we have VOC, and then linking that to real financial results with, for instance, IMS is very focused on retention and being able to link that over time. But I do think that there's some simpler ways to go after that with an example like this, with more of a kind of back of the envelope approach that you can get to more quickly. I actually think, Ann, we probably are having an ROI, one of the upcoming webinars is going to go deep on that topic too.
Yes, yes, we are.
And I also think, I just quickly would add too that sometimes we have to get a little creative on some of these efforts, but I would share with you we recently had a renewal representing several $1 million worth of business on an annual basis. And when we use some of our learnings around what customers said they really need and value, we flipped our renewal effort and presentation to more paint a picture of how we would be managing the account going forward with the value adds and demonstrating the value adds on a more frequent basis, as I previously described. I think that when that account renewed for a 3-year term, there is clearly a measure of that that is attributable to the customer experience initiatives and efforts.
That's awesome. So I'm going to bundle 2 questions, and I'm going to slide back into farther earlier on here. Kim, I think this would be for you. Somebody asked what template we use for journey mapping, and then somebody also asked if you could describe the yellow, green, and red.
You bet, you bet. So, CFN has been doing journey mapping for, gosh, almost 14 years now. And this framework that we have here in the slide that Ann's brought up is based on that experience. It's not, we find that it works in almost every industry. It changes slightly. Sometimes we may have, for instance, some businesses have a renewal kind of a stage because that's part of their customers' experience. So small changes, but this framework really works. And it actually is, as part of our CFN Insight, our journey mapping software, we actually have templates for people to start with that include this kind of framework and what we see as logical touch points that tend to happen, although you might need to change them just slightly, but tend to happen, again, across the industry. And then the criteria on the touch points, so the yellow touch points are pain points. So these are the things that are currently causing customer pain. But I think what's important to think about these is when they're resolved, customers might be happy and we might need to get them addressed, but nobody's going to say, I always use like as well, here's query@myaccount.com. So there was some problems with the website and customers complained about that. But if it was fixed, nobody would ever say, boy, that IMS, that query they've got on that My Account, that's why I'm sticking with them. Because what we want to really highlight is what's driving behavior. And when we say behavior, that means staying longer, buying more. And that's the definition of a moment of truth. What really drives customer behavior? And the green touch points are moments of truth, and as well as the red ones. But the red ones are where customers are also experiencing pain. So critical to get right, and customers are experiencing pain. So those are always the first places to focus. Let's get those taken care of.
Thank you. So we've had 2 questions the same, saying, can you send out the Q&A post-event along with the slides? Great question. So first, kudos to everybody, all the participants, and obviously our presenters for answering the question. So yes, we can work that out. Here's the next question. Do the process teams have access to the VOC results directly, or do they need to work through the VOC to get visibility?
So if I understand the question correctly, I think the answer is yes. Everyone in the company has access to the VOC results. And currently, if they wanted more detail about the VOC results, they would actually come to myself or the manager of VOC. My caution, though, would be that when you're early on in gathering VOC, give yourself some time to really get enough aggregate data. I say all the time, internally here at STERIS IMS, 1 month does not make a trend. And we're still cleansing some of our database of email addresses. We're really making sure we're tweaking the right questions. So I'm caution to our own internal customers that let's use this information judiciously, but really look at it on a more quarterly basis, because that's where I think we see themes and trends emerge. Obviously, if the process teams do have access to when we have individual issues that have surfaced or been identified. Thanks, Ann.
Thank you. Okay, it's a couple minutes before 10 of, so I'm going to ask one more question, and then we can do a wrap-up if that's okay. The reports that generate, and this is the person asking, the reports that generate our Net Promoter Score, 1 through 5, is it done for all customers, or is there a specific sample size that is targeted?
So Kim, yeah, go ahead, Kim. I'll chime in. Go ahead.
Okie doke. Thanks. So, you know, we are using in the relationship survey, which we haven't depicted here, but that IMS is doing, they are using Net Promoter Score, which is a 0 to 10 scale, but we are sending that out to all customers, and we want to know, we can look at role of those customers, and we might filter the data based on decision makers and end users and other strategic groups, but we really want to reach out to all customers, all the emails that we have, and understand where they stand. So we're doing that. We've just been rolling that out now, and I think from a sample size, I do think it's important before you analyze the data and start socializing it, that you do have a decent sample size. I think that depends on your customer base, how large that is, but certainly I would want to see, you know, 250, 300 before I shared anything with anyone.
Okay, thank you. And somebody squeaked in another related question, so I'm going to put it in there. What is the rate of response to your NPS survey?
So actually, Kim referred to, we've got two kinds of surveys. Last quarter, the last quarter of 2016 was actually a transactional survey specific to when customers received a repair, and the response rate ran about 12% on that. We're told that by today's standards, that's a pretty good response rate for the first time out. And we also hope that by having our VOC response team over time, we will build confidence in that survey and that customers will see it as responsive. The relationship survey that includes the Net Promoter question was just launched in January, and we have not yet closed that out. We'll close that out at the end of March.
Yeah, and I think another way that we're planning on building survey response rates over time is having communication plans out to customers. So telling customers, you know, end of year or on an ongoing basis, we heard you, here's what you said, here's the things we're doing. And then that can help increase response rate as well, as customers see that you're taking it seriously, even the ones who didn't respond, and doing something about it.
Ann, and I know we're about out of time here, but as I'm looking through it in questions and even what I know we faced internally here at STERIS IMS, I think one of the challenges that we all face on the business side is the stuff's great, but when we start out small, how do I have the resources to do what I need to do? And I think there's even a question related to that. And I offer this sincerely. I think that there really is great benefit in reaching out and using some of the resources on a consulting basis that are available out there. It doesn't have to be forever and ever, but to help get you started and set up, it's invaluable. And then you start proving the value as you go. Frankly, that's what happened in my situation. The organization here utilized consulting services, obviously, as we have described to you today with CFN. But as it became apparent that this focus and this function was of value, then the organization was prepared to take it on and resource it with full-time support. And you know, I think another question that was asked is, how do you gather all of this customer feedback? And that's another way which I think external organizations can also help you with some of the best practices around that. So thanks for the opportunity. Back to you, Ann.
And that, Vicki, is a perfect segue to the next slide. Kim?
Yeah, I'll just say thank you guys so much. Great questions. Makes us feel like we were really talking about some things that were driving real value for you guys. So thank you so much. If you'd like to have some follow-up conversation regarding journey maps or VOC, I'd be happy to have a 30-minute one-on-one. Just shoot me an email, or you can also just drop your name in the Q&A box, and Ann will get that to me. So again, thank you so much.
So in closing, obviously, we thank you very much for attending today's webinar. As I said, we have one about once a month. Recordings of previous sessions are on our website, and then this recording will be posted up there no later than Monday, hopefully by tomorrow, but we'll see. And our website is customersfirstnow.com, and then you'll see events at the top, and then you can get to it. Please join us for our next webinar. It's scheduled for next month. It's always we try to shoot for the third Thursday of the month. And then if you have any additional questions about today's webinar or any of our previous webinars or our previous speakers, feel free to reach out to me. There's my email address. Also, all the WebEx confirmations have my email address on there. So with that, I want to thank everybody for attending. This concludes our CX Leader presentation for today. Thank you, Vicki. Thank you, Kim. Goodbye, everybody.
You bet.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye.